in the real world. My name is Renee Alanis, Senior Marketing Manager here at TechExcel. TechExcel is proud to host our 2012 webcast series. We hold informative webinars on various topics once a month throughout the year. So please visit our website at techexcel.com for the current list of webinars. So here's a little logistics about today's webinar. I encourage all of you to use the question function located at the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question and we will answer them at the end of today's discussion. And if we don't get to it due to the volume of questions, we'll follow up with an email to you as well. Also, be sure to fill out our webinar series at the end of today's presentation. As soon as you exit the webinar, the survey will come up and it's provide us with helpful information. So thank you for joining us. And now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Tiran Zhao, CEO and Chief Software Architect from TechExcel. Welcome, Tiran.
Thank you, Renee. In today's webinar, we'll be talking about hybrid agile for the real-world software project. We'll cover briefly the overview of today's agile in the market. Then we'll spend majority of our time introducing SpecDD. We'll be talking about SpecDD process model, and we'll talk about how do you integrate requirement management in a SpecDD for balanced agile management. We'll talk about how SpecDD manages development process, and then how do you integrate quality into the requirement and the agile functions. Briefly cover why SpecDD is a model created for multi-team project, whether it's agile or non-agile. And we'll spend about probably 10 minutes or so, if we have the time, to demo TechExcel's new version of LM solution, DevSuite 9.1, to show you how DevSuite 9.1 can be used for hybrid agile management for your agile or non-agile projects. Then we'll do the conclusion. So the world today is going agile. According to market research published by Forrester Research Group in both 2010 and 2012, small business under 1,000 employees are using Agile as the most popular method at 30%. Still, many teams do not use any method. Enterprise, likewise, Agile is the most popular method, and followed by iterative development. As Agile becomes popular, it comes with an interesting twist. The world is going agile, but it's going agile in a hybrid way. 38% of the agile teams mix multiple agile methods. 35% of the teams practicing agile are mixing agile with traditional method. In other words, if you're using pure agile, a single agile method, most likely it is not the most productive way of doing agile management. So why is that? As the founder of a development methodology, SpecDD, I have spent the past 5 years researching and working with our customers, and I'm seeking for an ideal method. And I often think when you spend so much time and put so much effort and passionately seeking for development method, the bottom line actually is about you need to figure out an answer for this basic fundamental question. If you could only choose one of the following methods or factors or practice standard for your project success, which one would be yours answer? Do you primarily depend on better development process management, better quality management, better documentations, requirement management, or use better LM tools, or better communications? Obviously, you need them all. But what if you could only choose one? To me, the Scrum approach is fundamentally created based on one philosophy. If you can make the development process simpler and effective just for managing development team members' workload and build a self-driving team, you can achieve project success. So here is a summary of how Scrum helps you to manage software project to achieve success. Development consists of a set of iterations, or it's called a sprint. Each sprint has a duration fixed, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. At the beginning of a sprint, you select a set of work items, whether they are stories or tasks. You commit them as the sprint backlog. Then you allow the development team members to estimate the time required or the value for each item, and they start to self-drive. On a daily basis, they do the daily Scrum, and at the end of the sprint, there will be a potentially shippable product increment based on the current sprint. Scrum further claims, actually at any days, there will be a daily release and there will be daily build. The working software should be at a good quality level so that at any time the product actually can be shipped. A simplified process proved to be effective. I think the reason is software engineers more belong to engineering people, not like the scientific people. I had a chance of doing my PhD research both in chemistry, which belongs to science domain, and computer science, which belongs to the software engineering domain. Having a simple method actually enables team members to easily practice guidelines without thinking much of the rule, yet they are following best practice. Obviously, Scrum proved to be successful, but Scrum also proved to have limitations. I think the main reason a Scrum process is being hybrided in the real-world project is because when you simplify the development process, yes, it helps to increase the development productivities, but you might be lacking of quality management and the requirement management functions when it's too simple for some complicated projects, especially when multi-teams, distributed teams are involved. Requirement management need to be customized, need to be hybrided to add some requirement management functions. That is why I founded SpecDD. SpecDD is a requirement-driven and quality-integrated hybrid agile method. SpecDD provides a same set of principles to manage both agile and non-agile processes. So as a methodology, we're trying to promote best practices to enable a team to follow. I think learning processes is a bit different than learning programming language. Best practice involves building cultures, building practice guidelines, but often they're not so logical. Teamwork process optimization process often is an empirical process. That is why, if you notice, in our first slide, we use the ping-pong pedal. At my leisure time, I play a lot of ping-pong. And I often think, because I did a lot of coaching for my colleagues and my friends and young kids, and I often think when people learn something like a ping-pong games, it is really an empirical plus logical process. But it's certainly different like learning a programming language. Number one, you do need to practice, but really you need to pick up the feel to have an image of you as a learner playing the best. But how do you deliver the results? And I also often think ping-pong pedal often certainly is a tool. Theoretically, if you master the skills, you can use the worst ping-pong pedal but still win the champion. But at the end, somebody lose the game often blame the pedal, not himself, for the skills. Anyway, as a methodologist, what we want to teach is building a culture. So SpecDD fundamentally is based on one belief. Well, best development process does not necessarily is the best way to generate project success. However, better communications, best communications actually help to generate the best success. Why is that? I recall at the early days of TechExcel, as the founder, I had only 4 or 5 people. We are all software engineers, very talented, very hardworking. We developed the first product called DevTrack. At the time, I was doing programming, I was doing designing, I was doing daily communications. I was talking to the 4 or the 5 of us every day, even every 5-10 minutes. But we did nothing else pretty much. However, we delivered a product with high quality. In other words, if every one of us knows exactly what is the requirement, what is the feature you want, I trust, as long as they are responsible, they will be successful. However, as the company grows, as you have many, many team members working together, communication actually is very, very hard to accomplish optimization. So in other words, in SpecDD, requirements actually does not live in the product backlog. I love Scrum, so we want to keep a simple development process where in a SpecDD, development consists of a set of iterations. For each iteration, it works just like Scrum, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even 1 week. You commit a set of work items actually from the requirements, occasionally from the product backlog. And then you do the daily development, daily stand-up meetings, produce the working software. However, requirements is above the backlog. In other words, in the backlog, they are simple. They represent a simplified set of items that need to be taken care of right away by the development teams. Requirement actually is formally managed. However, requirement does not need to be finalized before they get assigned to a development sprint. As a matter of fact, often you do not understand requirement. You need still create a story. A story in this case is just an implementation copy of a requirement. And then you drive the creation of the working software. Next day, based on some implementation of the working software, the working software actually can be used to help you to understand the requirement, to refine the requirement. So all of a sudden, requirement exists above the backlog. As the backlog items get consumed to become working software, requirement stays to help you to drive the creation of testing standard, the testing cases, the test library, creating the test plan, and conduct the test. And the test, as you drive the testing cycle by cycle, you might find defects. Such defects get assigned either to the product backlog or to the sprint backlog. In other words, in SpecDD, we encourage the QA team to be existing independent of the development team. Occasionally, or often, we encourage one or two QA members join a development team as the QA floaters. So the QA members who join the development team help to assure the better quality for the current sprint. However, the independent QA team is always providing a quality view and a quality effort, constantly testing the working software, not only for the current sprint, but for the previous sprints as well. So the next slide, this slide shows you the SpecDD model, but more simplified and more focused on the artifacts, on the items. As you can see, requirements exist as specs, epic, or document. Epic, just like Scrum, epic is a big requirement. Spec is a small requirement. Spec, in my word, is more a quantified, formalized requirement. It manages a item of a requirement that is easy to understand by the end users, and hopefully it's easy to understand by your developers as well. And the amount of work required to develop a spec only takes 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, almost never about 5 days. However, an epic is big, so epic often gets broken down into multiple specs. A document actually is really a practical term, hoping that you can just use document as an epic. So it's really an epic document. In other words, a Word document contains contents with multiple specs living inside a document, which is a document or epic document. Spec get assigned to development. When it gets assigned to development, it exists as story. I use the term story from Scrum because I believe story represents a motivation of now this story representing a requirement spec items that need to be implemented. But story really is nothing but a link. It's an implementation copy or it's a work assignment, but the content really lives in the spec. In other words, spec 1 get assigned to be a story to form story 1-1. It requires 2 tasks to finish the story, but the same requirement might need additional implementation work assignment, whether it's for different Windows platform, for iPhone, for Android implementation of the same requirement, or simply it's due to the fact a same requirement need to be implemented in multiple sprints, so additional copy or additional story need to be retail the developers for implementing a feature. In terms of QA testings, we try to create test cycles, not necessarily in parallel or having the same start date and end date of development sprint. And within each test cycle, now you will be having QA testing task as you found the defect, and defect obviously get assigned to the product backlog. I want to emphasize again, product backlog in SpecDD is not the requirement. Product backlog often contains two things. One, defects found from testing effort. Two, when you assign stories, tasks to a development sprint, you cannot finish them on time, then delay them, put them into the product backlog. In other words, the requirement space might contain huge amount of specs for different versions, for the future version. However, the backlog should be always small. SpecDD framework is built based on team members, development process, product requirement management process, and the quality management process. Due to the time limit, so I'm only going to very, very briefly explain. In a SpecDD, you will have product owners, you will have project managers, or the SpecDD master. And the SpecDD master experts, once certified, do not necessarily need to be serving as the project manager, but often it's encouraged. SpecDD master does serve as the project manager. You have the dev team and you have the QA team. The development team often includes one or two QA floaters who are the co-located members for development purpose. In other words, when you have distributed teams and multi-teams, SpecDD try to provide you a more scalable approach. Obviously, product owner will be responsible to analyze the requirement, to decide the priority of the requirement, to decide what will be the release date, what feature will be included for the next release and for the next sprint, and the development team work in a way of looking at the requirement already prioritized and deciding the time required, and the QA team provides the QA testing, and in addition to the testing effort for the dev team plus the QA co-located QA members for each development sprint. In other words, in SpecDD, QA team is required to assure the quality beyond the current sprint. As you have more and more sprint, you do need to perform regression testing not only for the current sprint, but for previous sprints. Okay, so now we're going to cover a process of how requirement become working software, and what if you do find additional defects after the sprint is finished. So let's take a requirement initially created as an epic. It contains 3 child specs, and spec 1 and spec 2 get assigned to the sprint 1, and the story forms 2 copies of stories for each spec. Obviously, you're going to create child tasks for each story, and then you run the development, and the story gets converted to become your working software. If the story found to be not complete, really it means the requirement of the spec need to be better specified. then the working software often helps for you to refine the requirement spec. Finally, of course, you're going to do your best to make sure each story gets completed with quality within the sprint. But at the end of the sprint 1, can you really claim you will not have quality problem for the feature of spec 1, spec 2 you have finished? In a spec DD, the answer is no. You should have a QA team, of course. To some companies, it can be optional. And you'll be performing testing based on delivered working software at the end of the sprint. As you find a defect, it might be related to the story 1, or in other words, to the requirement 1. And the defect as stories or as defect represent the need of another implementation effort for the same story, for the same requirement 1 that need to be assigned to the next sprint. So here is an example. We're going to use a real-world example based on my experience. As the chief architect at TechExcel, I, of course, spend a tremendous amount of my time of working with our teams for improving our product. And this screenshot actually is the screenshot of DevSuite, our ALM product. One recent feature we added is called one click to view notes and attachment of a task. So the requirement was written as a spec the following way. We want to have a column that can be enabled. It will show an icon. When you mouse over the icon, we want to show a pop-up window like this. It will display a list of notes and document attachment for a development task, in this case 50390. As you click on the attachment, we want to pop up a browser to display the Word document, but without using the Word. It's a browser. It's displayed as Flash or as PDF. And we want to accomplish the result. Just one click, you can view any requirement document. Partially it's due to my driving of requirement need to be driving development, helping to reach the best communication. So one click by anybody is very important. So we did the initial writing of the requirement spec. We say when the user mouse hovers over a node attachment icon, it should quickly display a pop-up window. And it's assigned to a developer as a story. 1 day, 2 days later, the developer delivers the working software. So we tested. As we test, we found the following improvement needed. We say when you move the mouse cursor outside of the task icon, the node list overlay window should auto-close. Right now, it does not. The developer says, okay. Further, we say when you move the cursor and click other function links of the background, the background right now stops working once the pop-up window becomes active. And the developer believes that's a standard behavior of any pop-up active window. But then we say, okay, we do not care if it's a pop-up window or pop-up layer. The product owner says, we do not care if it's a tooltip layer or pop-up layer window. We do not care if it's active or not active. We just need to be able to click on the background. And we have other things. So what really we want to accomplish in this case is, as we discuss this requirement, we noticed the requirement was not complete. The working software will help us to put the 2 more additional additional requirement modification into it. We say keep the pop-up window open as long as the cursor is within the active areas. Further, we define the active area to be this icon, but add some extra space, and this list window, but add some active space. In other words, when you mouse over anywhere inside this icon area, it's not going to auto-close this pop-up window. As your mouse moves from the icon to the list window, it will remain open because there's an overlay for these two active areas. So what's the lesson we learned? There's often a gap, actually, between a programmer and an end user in understanding the same requirement. Sometimes it takes meetings, negotiations to reach the understanding. Sometimes things can get very hard to reach the understanding and agreement. If you do not improve the requirement, problems will happen again. Actually, I saw this problem happen on a daily basis. As long as you do not draw a picture like at the end, this picture I just showed you, which is end user friendly, testing people friendly, and programmers friendly, you're going to see the same problem. As a matter of fact, it happened to us because we did not document this final agreement one day earlier. The next day, a different team deliver the same functions but have the same problem. Why is that? The reason is developers thinking in a programming aspect. Programmers think I'm using a module called pop-up window. I'm trying to save my time, so I find a class which gives me the standard behavior. Unfortunately, as soon as it pops up, it's not going to recognize the active area surrounding the icon. So better communication should be standardized at the requirement level or just by the working software. I think it should be at the requirement level. If you standardize and build the team communications based on the requirement, you're going to be able to capture the process intelligence, which is very important for the team to be productive for the future product as well as for the innovations. Often we have seen key developers leaving a company. Our directors, our project managers become very much shocked. We thought nobody can understand the source code. And when you bring in new developers, often you hear the words, if the source code is so messy, it might be better for us to redo the source code. Having communication to be standardized at the requirement level will help you to avoid such problems, at least make the problem to be less headache. So I think we're going to try to speed up and quickly cover other aspects of SpecDD. First of all, what is a story? A story itself is an implementation of a spec. It drives the development work, so story gets consumed. But it drives the understanding and the refinement of the requirement, as the example already illustrates earlier. Of course, a story can be used to create, as the parent, to create a set of tasks. Some tasks represent development effort, some tasks represent QA testing effort. What is a sprint workload? A sprint workload is the committed work as stories broken down into tasks and assigned to each team member. By managing the workload, pretty much you will have an easy time to let the development team to be self-driving and yet commit and finish the committed work. Similarly, a burn-down chart can be used to facilitate the daily stand-up meetings and the daily build and daily delivery of the working software, and at the end to see how each development task get finished, how the time remaining get burned down, and how the remaining tasks get all finished at the end by each sprint. Testing in SpecDD receives very important recognitions and is formalized to have a process to manage the testing as the Scrum process for managing development process. Requirement specs are used to create test case template. Test case template are often linked with the requirement. Then you create a test plan for each release. Then you conduct the test plan by each testing cycles. As you perform the testing cycle, you will find a defect, and such defect will be assigned to the product backlog. Obviously, depending on if you are using this development method for Agile or for traditional development, you might or might not use product backlog concept. So what is a test case template? You might want to use tools or you might not use tools. You represent a test case with a title, testing procedures, expected result, and the time needed for you to set up the testing environment, and the time needed for you to finish each test case template. In other words, with the testing model, now you have a more formalized and quantified testing standard, all defined by test case templates. So how do you perform testing for the current sprint? And how do you perform testings for previous sprints? Obviously, as you're working on the current sprint, you might need to do testings mainly by the development team, who also the development team also have the QA floaters there. But still, you need to be running testing regression cycles independent of the current development effort. You might need to test all the previous finished development iterations by creating testing cycles and to do testings. So obviously, as you do testings with a separate team, you get a chance of better protecting the quality. But you're going to mess up the metrics for your development teams, because when and where should you assign the defects? Do you assign the defects to a sprint which is already committed? Do you assign a sprint always to the next sprint for the defects submitted so far? There are many tricks you can do. And also, because of the testing model, now you're going to accumulate a lot of reports you can do with a separate testing effort. So before I cover the next two slides, I want to quickly use 5 minutes of time to talk about how DevSuite can be used to manage the SpecDD process for Agile and non-Agile projects. So DevSuite provides you a requirement view, tracking view, testing view, primarily for the effort of requirement tracking and testing management. However, while you have 3 separate views, the team really can work within one development space. For example, in this case, we have a product version 1 that needs to be delivered. You can have development sprint, and it has linked requirement. From the linked requirement, you can look at the requirement and start to assign requirements into each development sprint. As you look at the requirement, you will see the workload, the sprint workload board like this. For Judith Brown, she has the following workload of 50%. Obviously, it's a sample project. And as you mouse over the requirement, for example, you have this task. It's for the requirement of 690. As you do one click on the document, because of the effort of we have put, now you have just one click viewing the requirement by browsers. You can easily mouse travel, and you can actually look at so this is the way for you to view a requirement. In other words, we want the tool to be created so that the requirement is always available for you to view, so that as a developer you have an easy time to understand while I have a development task. Of course, I'm going to enter the time spent and the time remaining so I can see a nice burn-down report at the end for my team. But requirement is always one click away for you to view what needs to be done. In terms of testings, DevTest provides you a way to define all the test case template, to plan each test cycle, and for the team member to run each testing cycle. For example, testing 3 contains the following development, the QA testing task. As you click on the task, it defines the testing procedures, it defines the expected result, and give you the time needed for your setup time and for your actual time. And if you need to look at the requirement, now you can easily click on the requirement to view the requirement description, or you can view the document via the document flash viewer to view the original document. In other words, if you notice, this document contains actually as an epic document, but it contains multiple child spec. You can view the spec requirement in the content of the original document. As you check in the document, it's automatically get refreshed as for you to view the flash. So quickly, I want to cover the Dev Suite product that quickly, and want to emphasize you can manage a project which is using Agile, single team or multiple teams. You can also create a development space just consists of multiple milestones for traditional development process using the same principles. So finally, I'm going back to continue and to finish the presentations. Obviously, we have talked about the SpecDD model. If I have the time, I would cover more how the details of the SpecDD framework and how SpecDD help you to manage a larger project where you have multiple teams. Why the requirement management help you to populate the product backlog or the sprint backlog with multiple teams, and why you can use multiple product backlog. And I do offer training courses. So as the founder, I'm promoting, after working the method for the past 3-5 years, I'm promoting a hybrid Agile method. The reality is, without a method, you are practicing Agile the hybrid ways. And with the training course, it's a one-day training course initially, and in the future we might consider 2 days. We are tentatively, we are committing December 4th for a training in San Diego, and December 6th in San Jose for a training. So to conclude, SpecDD is a hybrid agile method. Each development iteration has two deliverables. It's about improve the working software. It's about improve the understanding and the refinement of requirements. Without the requirement refined and understanding all reached by all members, you will be most likely losing the process intelligence. While you gain the productivity in the short for the current iterations, it might hurt your productivity for the future iterations. It will hurt you for capturing for the ability of capturing the process in understanding requirement and the conclusion why requirements are committed this way and the other ways. And SpecDD provides best practice guidelines as a methodology for you to practice Agile, but balanced with requirement and quality management. Thank you very much. So now we're going to be trying to answer some of the questions.
Right, Tieran, would you like some help with that?
Can somebody let me know what kind of questions we have received?
Right, can you hear me, Tieran?
Yes.
So we do have a question. How does SpecDD help multiple teams working on components of an enterprise solution coordinate engineering effort?
Yes. When you have multiple teams, the Scrum approach is let you create Scrum within the Scrum, which is really, to some degree, is an afterthought. With SpecDD, however, now requirement will be managed with sometimes just a few product owners, sometimes with a team, with the hierarchy structures. Because that now requirement get populated either to a single product backlog for the multiple engineering team or to multiple the backlog. Seeing the backlog is always dynamic, is always not so rich, so big. And the requirement, by coordinating the requirement and the dependencies, it can better coordinate the multi-team effort.
Great, thank you. We have another question. Are you using TDD within the sprint? And also, how do you maintain traceability between requirements, story, test library, test cycle, and QA?
Can you repeat the question? That's a lot of terms there.
Well, here, let's take the second half. How do you maintain traceability between requirements, story, test library, test cycle, and QA?
Okay, I wish I had more time to test to show you our working software. Great questions. How do you practice? Do you practice test-driven development? Yes, strongly encourage you to incorporate test-driven development for your sprint. For example, Julius Brown is assigned with a task 179. It says, why don't you do the work to implement show noteless pop-up window? Here is a requirement. When Julius Brown look at the requirement and look at the document, understand, oh, okay, it was written in a word clearly understood. However, understanding by engineers always take the spin of how I'm going to use my source code functions to deliver this result. By having test case template is at your fingertips, so that now the test cases are already defined here. You can create a new test case, or you can simply look at the test case. Now this is the test case. The QA engineers, especially the floaters, has put the QA testing writing as part of enhancing the requirement. As a result, it will help you to make sure what delivered is what intended by the end users. Can you read the second half again? Sorry for that.
Oh, no, sure. They just wanted to know how you maintain traceability from requirements all the way through QA.
Yeah. So because now you see the test case template defining the testing standard, which is linked with the requirement, in this case, the requirement 690. So as soon as you change the requirement of 690, it's going to be flagging the test case template, so QA team need to be aware. You might need to modify the requirement. It's going to be flagging the story as well as the development task, so the developers can automatically know all these links for the total traceability. To summarize, SpecDD to some degree, to put it in a very simple, it's Agile, but with built-in total traceability functions.
Great, thank you. We have time for maybe one or two more questions. One question here, Taryn, is does SpecDD have a concept of a portfolio where business development can report or track what they want, which then leads to epics and stories?
It's a great question. SpecDD as a methodology does not cover the portfolio and team management, resource management, project management. And because I believe in order to promote a methodology, it needs to remain simple. Let's help you to achieve more. And I wish I can say it's related to like ping pong games. You don't think much when you do the matches. Less principle help you to be more relaxed and remember the most important thing to be winning games. However, portfolio indeed is a tool provided by TechExcel, the Dev Suite solutions. It gives you the portfolio views, and where you can see all the development you have done, see the reporting, and it gives you the ability of planning all the stories and the tasks in more like the Gantt chart ways, and also give you the ability to see every team members and how busy they are in terms of the assigned time. Obviously, the testing sample project is horrible. Nobody is busy. And also based on the story and the time required and the task, the time required and time remained, so you will know how busy each person is based on their work schedule, 8 hours a day, but why they're not working, they have no work assignment, why they don't even have any tasks assigned to them. So that's the portfolio function. In other words, as a tool, obviously, it's not just designed just for SpecDD. As a methodology, we want to be simple. As a tool, we want having a tool to have Dev Suite as LM tools to satisfy different needs by our customers.
Taryn, we have lots of questions, but I think we will follow up individually with each of these after the webinar. But one last question, you did mention already about the training. Someone would like to know, will we provide information on how to become certified as a SpecDD expert?
Yeah, thank you for such interest. As somebody who has done over 20 years research and initially pursued a PhD, tried to be a professor, and ended up founding and running a company, I have spent tremendous amount of effort in the past 5 years for SpecDD. Obviously, this industry requires multi-talent from multiple people. So obviously, I would love to have you, our customers, to join such effort. And SpecDD has a website which will promote people who are willing to do writings and to do even coaching and teachings with our team and with myself as a joint effort. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. As we mentioned earlier, we'll be providing a link to today's recorded webinar, which you may view again. For more information about SpecDD, you may visit our website at specdd.com, specdd.com. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.